Hey everybody, welcome to the Chris and Dan show. Today we're going to discuss, actually something Dan and I are doing.
We're gonna
In
pretend to
terms,
be financial experts.
yeah, this
This
is
is not
not financial
financial
advice.
advice.
Yes, absolutely
We
not
are not
financial
Jay
advice.
Bravo. We are not fear porning you every single. He actually posts twice a day, so it's like twice every 12 hours. Fear porn for the last 4 years. How long we known Jay Bravo?
Well, we've
Has
just
he ever
followed.
had a positive video? I don't think he has.
He has, but it's
Okay.
10% of the time.
Well,
So
no, no.
90.
I mean, I know like the content's like fair. It's 50-50, but his thumbnails and
Oh, his titles
titles are always like world's gonna end.
negative. Yeah.
It's
So,
not good for your cortisol, man. Like people are not thinking about long-term impacts of YouTube fear porn on like development. It's probably gonna raise your cortisol. This is a great book too. I'm trying to get this guy on, Chris, for Dr. Joe show, but also for Chris and Dan show.
cool.
This guy's a genius.
So the
And
person Dan,
you know my
Dan,
rule
Dan,
of
slow down,
yeah,
slow down.
yeah, go ahead, go
You
ahead.
just, how much caffeine have you had today?
Not a lot actually. I actually
So
need a bit more.
for those who have no clue what we're talking about, it's another YouTube channel. His name's Johnny Bravo.
Come on, everyone knows Johnny
No,
Bravo.
they don't. So he only has 200,000 subscribers.
Really?
Yeah.
We're gonna catch up on his ass.
So if you're interested, you go check him out there.
Shit, Guru might catch him.
Yeah, I would say there's a
And
high
I have no
probability.
fear porn. Very little fear porn on Guru.
Yeah. So if you're interested in his channel, you can check him out. So what are we doing? We're selling some stock
Yeah,
today.
but I was gonna tell people, you know how you and I had a debate about we won't call people doctors unless they're actual clinicians?
MDs.
I disagree with that now.
Why?
A lot of these PhDs are way more researched than doctors, than clinicians. This guy, the thing with them is they focus on one niche like their entire lives. This guy knows more about estrogen and what causes feminization of males
Hmm.
than any clinician. I'll put my money on it. And he's a PhD. So like these kind of people deserve to be called doctor. I take that back from that was
Well,
like that was not okay for me to say that.
well, you'd get a strong argument from doctors against that position.
I don't
Medical
care.
doctors.
I would put them out, let them debate and see if they know more than this guy on certain things.
I think every medical doctor I've ever spoke to in which this came up, which isn't a lot, maybe three, they laugh at PhDs as
I don't
doctors.
care.
No,
I
I
don't care.
understand that. I understand that. I'm just saying their perspective.
It's rude. I think they need to be humbled. They need to take a slice of humble pie. But anyways, Dr. J, would love to have you on both shows. Chris and Dan show is more prestigious, but then we could put you on Dr. Joe, Dr. Joe show as well.
So I'm curious.
I'm
Um,
joking about more prestigious.
I, I'm curious to get your perspective. So
Yes,
now you feel these researchers.
I think they've earned the title doctor in many
Okay,
cases like this.
what about a doctor of liberal arts?
If they know more, I mean, I don't know. I'm not ready to go that far yet. If they feel like being called doctor, I will, out of respect. But and they've certainly earned that as well. But as
I
far as my respect, like I'm just talking about me.
sure.
I'll call you doctor out of respect to you, like for getting your liberal arts PhD. But I'll call you doctor like voluntarily without you needing to remind me if you're a master of like any scientific field that I mean, these guys are like top 1% of knowledge in that field, regardless of clinician or not. Like, the only difference is do you treat patients or do you not treat patients? But so what? And Dr. Joe is a clinician and, well, he's not a PhD, but he's a clinician, MD, and he's got a master's in biochemistry, I think. And he deserves the title doctor.
Of course. There's an argument against that, though. Not, the argument against it would be pride. Really, that's the only reason to call somebody doctor is for their pride, not
For
yours.
their
Not
pride, yeah. Yeah.
So why are you? It's one of 7 deadly sins, right?
I mean, it's respect also, not just pride. And that's where it comes to the personal,
Yeah,
like,
for you
I will
personally,
call yeah, yeah,
but for them, it's pride.
from a lot, not all of them, but yeah.
Sure.
I know some doctors, medical doctors, that don't like it when I call them doctor,
Yeah,
like
I've met
Doctor
quite a few this
Harris.
way. I've
Yeah,
met quite
Doctor
a few that
Harris,
are.
my
Yeah,
dermatologist PI says, "Call me Ron," and he keeps saying that, but I still call him Doctor Harris.
yeah. I've quite a few of our clients are that way.
Mhm.
And I've met a number of doctors at like investigator meetings the same way. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've actually said it's an insult to call me a doctor. Doctors are jerks.
Ah, see? They're on that they would believe Dr. J is a doctor then,
Yeah.
probably. Anyways, this is not even what this video is about. This is why Chris and Dan show is doing so well, though, because 'cause we're all over the map with this
We're
stuff.
bipolar.
You know which video did surprisingly well?
Hmm.
Our Bud Light, sucralose, and just when we talked about random stuff we're eating.
Yeah.
It got disproportionate number of views compared to our other stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the channel in quite a while, at least, how the videos are doing.
That when we reacted to the Mexican guys, the new number one guys, it did very well too.
Interesting. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, then we're gonna have to react to one song today. I already have it.
Okay.
Later, much later, at the end.
Okay.
So Dan and I, how many years ago now? I think right before the pandemic, we opened that TD Ameritrade account, right?
Do you call it a plandemic or a pandemic?
Well, as it turns out, pandemic, but at the time it was a pandemic.
Can it be both?
Sure,
Okay. I'm on
sure.
the school of thought that it was both at this point. I
Yeah,
used
I
to be
think,
like, nah, nah, it's pandemic. Now it's no, no, it was both.
and I would tend to agree with you. I think it wasn't intentional, but there's a possibility it was in terms of the virus getting out. Um, I think I wouldn't be surprised either way, intentional or not. But I think the powers that be took advantage of the situation, which would be a planned
Oh yeah, it was a money grab by Big Pharma. I
Yep.
think the title of this video should be "We're trying to get banned from YouTube."
But anyhow, prior, off on a tangent there a little bit, but prior, we had started a stock account, right? We had extra funds, didn't know what to do with
Uh,
in our business account, so we started a stock trading account,
right.
right? And we built it up enough to purchase a house,
Mhm.
right? Which we did about 2 years ago. No, yeah, almost 2 years ago.
The one with Joey?
Yeah, but it will be 2 years ago this December, right? So a year and a half ago.
Right.
Um, so we're prepared, I think, to buy another house. I think we have enough funds in there to cash the rest out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm down. I think
So,
stocks are shakier than real estate right now.
and I would agree. And I think the only concern I have with real estate is I think the prices are going to come down more, like significantly more in the next year or two, right? I mean, you take Dr. Smith, what he told you the other day in terms of interest rates. That's one factor that'll push prices down, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he said if you're planning to buy in the next 3 years, buy now because rates are just going to keep going higher.
Right. But those rates going higher will push prices down. I don't know if it's proportion or not, though, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then you have other factors. I don't know what stagflation does to real estate values, but
I don't
that's
even know what stagflation is, honestly.
so
And I'd be
stagflation.
hard pressed to find an economist that can define it clearly
Oh, I
as
think you can
well.
define it clearly. It's when the three economic powers happen all at the same time that usually don't happen at the same time: high unemployment, high interest rates, and high inflation, all three at the same time. Because
Ah, is that
usually,
all it is?
yeah, because
Huh.
usually high interest rates drive inflation
Well,
down.
you're old enough to have remembered it when it happened the last time.
No,
I wasn't around.
I wasn't quite old enough to remember.
Wasn't, FDR president?
Ha 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 ha! Ha, you're funny. No, it was Jimmy Carter. I
You
was
were
alive.
around. I
I
wasn't
was
born during Jimmy
alive, but
Carter.
I was like 6.
Yeah, you're a product um, of Jimmy Carter. I'm a product of Reaganomics. I'm
Yeah,
all about dollars and cents.
yeah. The more I
You're
learn
a
about
product
Reagan, the
of the
less I
status
like him.
quo, Jimmy Carter status quo. I'm a product of Reaganomics and just say no.
It's fun. See, I love how we go on all these tangents, but it's funny how as you age, you learn more and more about prior presidencies, and it's like, oh my god, they were a horrible president. I used to love Reagan. I don't like him any longer.
Really?
Yeah, he might be one in the category of worst presidents, in my opinion.
You might lose your Republican status after that statement.
He's awful. He
Wow, Chris, you're gonna join the dark side
so Bush is definitely in the top 3 worst presidents. So is Obama. So is Biden. Those are in the top 3 worst
of all time.
of all time, in my
Where
opinion.
where would you rank like Ulysses S. Grant or
I don't know enough about them, but
yeah,
what I
so you're
do
just talking modern in your lifetime.
sure, but I what I'm taking into consideration is major precedents set legally in terms of freedoms to the individual, and those presidents did nothing, as far as I'm aware, that interfered with individual freedom. These
Where would
more
you rank JFK on the spectrum then of what he did for individual freedoms versus not? I
I
mean,
would
he
say
was
he
a
was
Dem.
yeah, but I would say he was probably a pretty good president in terms of
Ah,
his handling of like minority rights, specifically
ah.
black people. What he basically said is, you know, don't bother me about it, but take care of it.
What about his
Well, the presidency had no involvement in it.
what about his call to action to get us on the moon and all that? Do you think that's a president's job to also inspire?
Well, constitutionally, part of the president's job is to make sure economically the country is sound, which is what that ultimately did.
Yeah, but like the reason a lot of people like JFK is because he was very inspirational of a leader.
So, yeah, I mean, inspiration is important from the president, but
We have a lot
conversely,
of that right now in office too.
con-
Biden inspires a lot.
oh yeah, he's a huge inspiration. But conversely, you don't want to interfere with the Constitution. I think that's my biggest concern with the president,
Do you think he did JFK or no?
to a degree.
They all do, no?
Yeah, but some more than others. Like for example, Bush was
Well,
awful.
Lincoln also, and
Oh yeah, Lincoln might be one of the worst presidents for the Constitution ever.
wow,
Oh, there's no denying it. Him and FDR were probably the worst constitutionally.
and Lincoln was a Republican.
Lincoln was a Republican, FDR a Democrat.
So you think Lincoln? Maybe that'll be the title. Lincoln, one of the worst presidents ever.
No, we'll get banned.
Says white guy. That'll do well.
Well, I'm saying from a constitutional perspective, right?
Mm.
I
But
mean,
don't you think the Constitution needs to be amended? It's very difficult to amend it, first
well,
of all.
that's
So
just
it's not
it.
like it's easy to do.
No, of course it's not. But that is the process. You want to change something in the country, you have to amend the Constitution. Lincoln didn't do that. Matter of fact, he tried to have Supreme Court justices thrown in prison
Good
so
man.
they wouldn't agree with what he was trying to do.
We probably need him in 2023.
No, that would be horrible.
Lincoln, if Lincoln came back, you wouldn't vote for him?
No,
Chris, we might just
no.
have to end this podcast now. Lincoln's a legend.
Yeah, but he's one of the worst presidents
Why is he on Mount Rushmore then?
because people don't because of slavery alone, right?
So you
Which
don't think that alone's enough to make him a hero?
no, slavery would have been over within 50 years. They passed laws in a way that was ending slavery. Civil
Do
War
you,
didn't need to be fought. I mean, yeah, it ended slavery 50 years sooner, but it damaged the Constitution in the way that the way it's viewed for the since then.
Mm,
States lost their rights. The way
I
that
see.
this country was referred to prior to the Civil War was in a different way than it's referred to now. It was not the United States of America. It was viewed in such a way that every country was kind of or every state was kind of its own individual country. It's not viewed that way any longer, which is the design of the Constitution. The states are the ultimate authority.
Mm,
Even the Constitution in its original founding had to be changed because of slavery, which this isn't necessarily a bad thing, this part of it, but it was intended that the Bill of Rights was only for the federal government. It was not meant for the states. It was only the federal government. The
so
states
I
were to have their own Bill of Rights.
so I take it by this rant that you're a big fan of Newsom.
Oh yeah, I love Newsom. You know I'm kidding too. That's complete
I
fraud.
don't. I don't.
Well, because of slavery, they had to change the Bill of Rights to force states to follow what occurred because of the Civil War, right? In terms of slavery.
Right. Right.
So the Bill of Rights applied to all states, not just the federal government.
Yeah. I mean, this is a topic that will never end, right? Slavery. It's been what 150 years,
Well, 1865,
almost 200.
right? 1865. When did the Civil War end? 1860s, somewhere in there.
Well, anyways, what about shifting to more modern day things? Like, are you a fan of Mayor Suarez of Miami?
I don't know a lot about him. I know he's one of the first conservative mayors in a very long time in Miami. That's about all I know.
Yeah, and he's the first Miami-born mayor of Miami ever.
Really,
Can you believe that?
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Um, I watched like a 10-minute interview of him, and I don't remember who it was with, but yeah, I mean, he seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders in terms of policy.
Yeah, he turned the city around. So behind me, what do you think this is image is behind me?
Well, it's some sort of DNA chain of something.
Oh, okay. I thought you would have said stick and candlestick or whatever. It's insulin. This is a
Oh,
preview for the next Dr. Joe show, Insulin Resistance. It's
interesting.
coming out soon. We have to record it soon.
So, what causes insulin resistance?
Well, the old school of thought was obesity causes insulin resistance, but there is
That's
actually
what I was
genetic
taught.
Huh?
That's what I was taught.
Yeah, and you were probably taught that the food pyramid is a good thing to follow too.
In high school, but not after that.
Right. So the modern day research is showing that there's predisposition to insulin resistance that may not have anything to do with one's lifestyle. So some people
So
get
it's genetic.
uh it's epigenetic. So let's say you and I, right? Let's say you have the gene for insulin resistance and I don't.
Hmm.
We could eat the same. Like let's say we both eat like shit.
Hmm.
You're way more likely to get insulin resistance than me. We could both still get it because I could just eat myself into that state too. But you'll get it first, and then obesity comes. It's not the other way around. Insulin resistance comes before obesity. And a lot of doctors have been blaming their patients for getting type 2 diabetes when in reality they should have been looking at their insulin resistance to begin with. So that school of thought is changing right now, completely changing. And to throw a monkey wrench in it, estrogen. So all the estrogen producing compounds in our crops and uh, in our fragrances and in our sun lotions and all that is having a negative impact on testosterone because the receptors compete for the same thing, estrogen or testosterone, which will increase insulin resistance in everyone. So there's not one thing to point a finger at and blame and say, "Oh, diabetes type 2 is an illness of fat people." It's not
But it
actually the
is.
case. Well, they do get obese. By the time it's full blown, they end up being overweight, but that's not the cause. It's not the cause. It's more nuanced than that, but
So, well, so back when I was diagnosed as a diabetic type 1, not type 2, which you're discussing,
right, yeah, type
um,
1's totally different animal.
I took a 3-month course on diabetes, and even at that time, they knew they knew that insulin resistance is what caused people to become diabetic. They knew that then, right? But
Yeah.
they said what the cause of insulin resistance was being fat.
Yeah, those 2 need to flip. Obesity comes after insulin resistance. And the
So,
new school of thought. We're actually doing a few studies on you negotiated a budget on this actually. It's not insulin resistant yet, it's type 2, but the
mm,
one in the fall is just obesity with no type 2 diabetes.
so what
Eh,
causes insulin resistance?
like I said, well, lifestyle, but others are more predisposed to it than others based on epigenetics. So you may have a gene that's inactive that causes more insulin resistance in some than others, and lifestyle will determine if it's turned on before someone else. You could be lean. You could be a lean person and have insulin resistance. You could work out, you could eat well, and you could still get insulin resistance. And if it's not treated, then you'll get obese and then you'll get type 2.
So why
And
does that
also, you could be fat and not get insulin resistance
so that part doesn't make any sense to me, at least from what I know. Why would insulin resistance cause you to become fat?
because now you're stopping the cells from using the energy, the glucose. So
Right.
it's storing it in the fat cells, which is what it knows what to do. That's what the body does when it can't use the glucose in the blood. It just converts it to fat
Sure. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
because the
But
body thinks it's starving because
sure.
it's not getting glucose. So it's like, hey, let's just make more fat because I don't know what's happening and
Yeah.
we might need this.
I was thinking of it from a type 1, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Sorry.
type 1, different animal. They almost shouldn't call it diabetes, but
Well,
they call it that because of the sugar, the glucose in the blood. That's why.
yeah,
But
yeah,
anyways, man,
doesn't
that's a
agree.
long preview. That's a
Yeah.
long preview. I don't even know which angle Dr. Joe's gonna go with it though, because he
Huh.
just. Anyway, I've been reading this weekend to prepare for this one. Who knows when it's gonna be?
Well, you should take the devil's advocate argument, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but
I
and just
always do. I always
but,
do.
but present the argument used to be that insulin resistance preceded obesity preceded insulin resistance because what would happen is you'd eat too much of a caloric intake. It covers the receptors in the cells, the
That's not
insulin
right.
receptors.
The
I'm
cover
just
the
saying, no,
receptor part's
I
wrong.
understand that. I'm saying that's what the thought used to be.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
It,
yeah.
the fat covered the receptors, and therefore it wasn't necessarily insulin resistance, but more just the insulin can't doesn't have a receptor to go to.
Like a
Covered.
physical, yeah, yeah,
That was what I was taught.
right. Yeah, I was wrong, and now it's changing, and doctors are becoming more empathetic to overweight patients because it's more complex than that. And yeah, of course, there's plenty of people that eat bad and get fat and then get type 2 diabetes. But there are also surprisingly large number of people, especially with this increase in estrogen generation out there. And there's actually a one-to-one correlation between estrogen levels rising in our foods and insulin resistance. And there is a relationship between testosterone and insulin resistance through the transporting molecule SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin.
So testosterone keeps you thin.
Testosterone and and insulin resistance are inversely correlated. So and it's a negative feedback loop too. So the more insulin resistance you get, because they compete for the SHBG binding, testosterone and estrogen. And if you have more estrogen on that limo, SHBG is like a limousine for testosterone or estrogen because those are fat soluble. They can't travel through blood without it. And there's some kind of relationship between that and insulin resistance. So if the body's seeing too much insulin floating around, which is another hormone, SHBG will decrease, which will not allow testosterone to get to the receptors they need to go. And it's like a feedback loop, but they're starting to study this stuff. And that's where my knowledge kind of drops because
If
first
you
of all, no
answered
one
my
really knows this stuff.
if you answered my question, I didn't understand the answer.
Uh this is why I respect the PhD doctors.
Did you answer my question?
Yeah.
Does estrogen cause fat, or
Yes.
conversely, does testosterone
Estrogen does
help you
cause fat.
remain thin?
No, it's well, I don't know about that last part. The first part definitely. Estrogen increases fat.
Yeah, because my initial question was, does testosterone help keep you thin? So
The
you don't
answer
know the
is
answer to that.
the answer is probably, but as far as I've read, I haven't seen that directly, but it's if the answer would be yes, it's indirectly through estrogen.
Okay.
There,
So
those two are inversely correlated as well in
so
men.
estrogen for sure causes fat.
Yes.
You don't know one way or the other about testosterone. It probably helps you keep thin though.
Yeah, it probably helps you keep the
Okay. Simple
yeah.
answer for those who were like me and didn't understand what Dan was saying.
Yeah, but nothing's simple in biology. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They're all related. Everything is. Um anyways, okay, so you want to share the stocks
Okay. So
trading?
you ready to sell some shares?
Yeah.
So let me explain this. So Dan and I just made an offer on a house, right?
Yeah.
And we need to come up with the down payment, which we're doing
Yeah, we
through
forgot about that part.
which we need to do by selling some stock.
Tell the realtor what happened was.
Yeah, didn't sell any stock, and the stock market crashed. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow with this new report on inflation.
I mean, yes, I normally don't care about those things, but if you need that capital for something immediately, like a down payment, then it makes sense to take risk off the table. Nobody likes precious metals.
They don't, huh?
Only Kiyosaki. Oh,
I
and you
like,
do. You like it.
I like precious metals.
I mean, it's not bad. You're not gonna lose anything on it, but
Well, if what's happened in all other uh, falls in the market, they all like quadruple or more in value. It's just a matter of will that happen. You have faith that the markets will continue to do well, the economy will do well, or do you think it's going to
I
have
do.
real setbacks?
It's gonna have setbacks, but it's gonna do well ultimately.
Yeah. I don't know how you have both at the same time.
It's gonna have like shocks to the system um, in the next year or two. But if you zoom out 10 years from now, it's gonna be net super good.
So the 2008 occurrence or 2007, you don't think it'll replay like that?
I don't think so. I think everyone's waiting for that. I don't actually think it's gonna happen.
Okay.
The that happened last time like that. No one really expected it. Just a minority of people. Um, this time around, it's like everyone's expecting that. I don't think it's actually gonna happen.
Well, because
That's my take. We'll
sure.
keep this in the video too.
Okay. Well, the reason is because of experience, right? Because of 2007 and 8.
Right, but people don't learn from experience.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah,
So, all the indicators that were showing this was coming in 2007, they're now familiar with those indicators. So, they're looking at those same indicators again, and they're all even worse than they were for 2007 now. That's why they're all saying this is going to happen
But what
because,
happened last time was the indicators fine, maybe there's correlation, but the reason that bubble popped was subprime lending.
well, again, that indicator's there again. So,
No, people
yeah,
are not getting loans. Look how
yeah.
hard it was for
Not,
us to get a
it's
loan.
not so it's not subprime lending, but in the same fashion, it's there again. But this time it's in terms of commercial real estate, and they say it's like 4 times worse than what the subprime lending was.
Yeah, but commercial is going to impact a few businesses that can't. I mean, they all see the writing on the wall, anyways. It's not going to impact the average Joe who
Okay,
bought a house super leveraged to the eyeballs and now can't sell.
who did that ultimately impact?
What, the subprime? It impacted everyone.
No, ultimately it was one specific sector that it impacted, which in turn impacted the entire world.
Well, the
What was
banking. It was
Yeah,
banking, but it was also
exactly.
the average Joe.
But the banking is what affected the entire world,
Yeah,
right? 'Cause banks were
sure.
huge banks were gonna go out of business, like Chase, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it's 4 times worse now for commercial real estate in which banks are holding these loans,
yeah.
okay? So I wouldn't be too certain that it's not much worse this time than last, and that's again why all of these
Oh,
economists.
commercial is gonna tank.
Yeah, and it's gonna take the banks with it that are holding these loans.
I don't know. They subsidized already, so I mean, you think Chase
No,
and
they hold the loans, Dan. It's
so you
4
think
times
the big
worse.
banks? You think the big banks are gonna fail?
Yes, a lot of them probably will,
History
unless
showed you that the government will never let that happen.
yeah, unless the government bails it out again,
That's
which
what they're gonna do. You know why? Because
okay,
we're the world reserve currency, and I don't see that changing in the next 50 to 100 years.
okay, not disagreeing with anything you're saying, Dan, but what you're describing is exactly what happened in 2007, 2008. That's what I'm just saying. I mean, that's why they're saying this because they have indicators, they have experience with this
Well,
occurring previously.
2007, 2008, a good amount of people lost their homes.
Yeah, but that doesn't impact the economy, people losing their homes. It doesn't. Why would it? Right? What impacts the economy is what happens to the banking, what happens to lending, what happens to people's ability to spend money, right? Unemployment, things like that are what affect the economy. Losing your house doesn't affect the economy per se.
Well, the rates are already up, and
Yeah.
people are already tightening up on their spending. So I think it's going to impact
So that's not
commercial
true either, Dan.
sector and the
Tightening up,
banks.
so inflation is still very high, and what causes inflation is spending. So that's not true.
That's businesses spending.
No, it's everything spending.
Well, maybe there's a credit card bubble no one's seeing.
There is.
I'd be more concerned with that than the commercial.
Well, again, I'm not an expert on commercial. I'm not an expert on anything, but
You're expert on SOS conference.
no, I'm not even an expert on that.
True.
It's like they're saying it's 4 times worse the commercial bubble than again they
The
be
fact that they're already saying that tells me it's gonna won't be that big of a deal.
okay.
People are already proactively doing things to prepare.
Uh, okay.
You'll see tomorrow with the Fed. They're
It's,
gonna be feel comfortable to not raise rates.
it's not tomorrow. It's Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
Tomorrow's when the report comes out on inflation,
Oh,
and then the
okay.
following day is what they decide to do from that report.
I mean, short term, who knows what's gonna happen? There's gonna be a lot of corrections. Long term, 10 years. If you buy today and you just stick through those, even if it's a depression, 10 years from now you'll be better off if you kept that same stock, provided that's a good company that didn't go out of business.
10 years.
Yeah, like
So
Tesla. Tesla,
sure,
you'll be better off owning Tesla, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Google,
I don't.
probably
So
100 other companies.
I don't necessarily disagree. Again, this is being put on the internet, so I'm just going to offer the converse
The good thing
the
about this is it'll be available to watch in 2033.
sure, but there's been two times in the history of the Dow in which if you bought it at the peak, you incurred a retraction in the stock market to the point where it took you 30 plus years to get your money back if you bought at the peak. Right?
If you bought the wrong companies at the peak.
No, any companies, right? Aside from I've seen a few videos on this in terms of if you purchased companies that were high dividend yields, which there's a significant share of those, you were able to get your money back in about 20 years. So, I mean,
Eh?
it can take a long time to get your money back if you buy at the wrong time. I'm not
That's
saying
if you
that's going to
think
happen now.
it's if you think a depression. I mean,
Well,
I
one
don't
was
know.
a depression, the other was not a depression in the stock
Right.
market.
Well, we've been waiting for it and it's not here and rates are going up and spending's tightening.
Well, stagflation, like we discussed a little bit earlier, there's three components. One component is doing very well, and that's unemployment. The unemployment's super low. Matter of fact, there's many jobs out there that are not being filled, and we experienced this ourselves in terms of research, clinical research coordinators.